We're gonna go about an hour.
Great.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Famous last words. All right, here we go, guys. All right, folks, welcome back to TWiP. I'm sitting here with Miss Darlene Hildebrandt and Mr. Rick Sammon. Guys, how's it going? What's going on in your world?
It's going well.
Going well? Cranking? Creating content? Darlene, you are the consummate content creator and curator over at Digital Photography School, right? What's up over there?
Just to be clear, I don't create all of it, but I do curate it all and edit it all. So we've had a little discussion about editing already pre-show. So yeah, I go through a lot of content, but it's actually kind of cool because I'm current on all news happenings and new products, and free stuff gets sent to me, and yeah, it's fun.
You get your finger on the pulse. I did listen to a podcast the other day from Darren Rouse, and he was talking about how he's moving and starting to play around with doing podcasts, which I think is really awesome. But he also mentioned that he said something about one of his staff members was away on vacation, so he had to do more work. I'm like, is Darlene slacking off over there?
Well, technically, there was actually 3 of us away because we all went to the same conference in Portland. So there was myself, his editor at ProBlogger, and Jasmine, who is the manager of everything else DPS that I don't do. She does the products and the ebooks and the events for ProBlogger, everything else. She was gone as well. So I'm guessing it was one of them.
Okay, all right. We'll go with that. That's your story, and you're sticking to it?
He wasn't picking up any of my slack.
All right. Also on the show, Mr. Rick Sammon. You know, speaking of, because in the notes, guys, I put Rick is the prolific guy when it comes to book publishing, and Darlene, you have your finger on the pulse of digital content distribution. This is a 1-2 punch. So,
Absolutely.
Rick, what's going on in your world, man? What have you been writing on lately?
Well, my book came out in April, and thanks for the nice review on Amazon.com. It's been like #1 in color since April, thanks to your review. The other reviews were good, but your review was the best.
Hey, that was my pick of the week last week.
I know. Yeah. Sales went up. Actually, it went down to #2 for like 3 minutes, and then went back up after that. But, I've been promoting the book, and one of the things I think we're going to talk about is that no matter what product you have today, you have to become like the PR agent.
Right.
So I've been spending a lot of time promoting the book. Had a lot of book signings. I had one at Adorama the other day. It's funny. I tell people, writing a book sometimes isn't fun, but autographing a book is always fun.
Yeah,
it is.
So that's what we're going to be talking about. So I have in the show notes here that the topic is publishing atoms versus electrons, or paper versus pixels, right?
Okay.
So, and that's what I want to talk about. I mean, Rick, what was it, like a year ago, 2 years ago, you made a prolific statement. You know where I'm going with this. You made a prolific statement that Rick Sammon, the guy that you can't walk into any bookstore without seeing his name, was not going to be writing books anymore. You were going to be moving over to apps and digital because that was the future. But now I have in my hot little hands a Rick Sammon book, a physical book. What happened?
Well, I have 11 apps, and I have a lot of ebooks, and I just thought it was time to. It's been 5 years since I wrote a book.
Yeah.
And this is actually the heaviest book. I'm just going to show you this part. Okay. This is like, well, there's the cover, but it's a heavy book, and actually I wrote it like as a textbook for like students.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe going to RIT or whatever, because it's really a brain dump. And it really includes, like, I really don't know if I could do another one.
Yeah.
Right, for 5 years. But
yeah, I gotta say it's one of your best books that I've seen. I mean, it's really well done.
Well, thank you. And you know why I think it's doing well? I think I wrote some of the other books for myself. And I think the key to writing a book is writing it for the reader. And every single chapter, every single paragraph, I said to myself, is the reader going to like this? I don't want to leave any questions unanswered. So I think that would be like one of my #1 tips. Write a book, no matter what it is, whether it's on skiing or cooking or on T-shirts. We all have on good T-shirts.
Yeah.
Write it for the user.
Yeah. But okay, to put a finer point on it, people, and younger people especially in today's generation, are like, I don't, paper, what is that stuff? You're gonna kill a tree? I want it on my iPad or my Kindle or my Android tablet. Why do I need a physical book these days? So what's your response to that?
Well, it's the ebook. There's an ebook version of it. There's a Kindle. You could get it on Amazon on the Kindle version, Apple Books. It's there too. So it's all over on the ebook version. But I think there's something to be said for you know, holding a book. People actually, I saw someone on the plane reading the book.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Which was kind of cool. So I think there is something to be said for having that reference. You know, I really thought I'd never do it, but I did it, and I'm very, very proud of it.
Yeah, and Darlene, you know, where I fall, I'm like right in the middle because I have an iPad, which I have a ton of ebooks on there, and I have a Kindle, which I like reading at certain times. But I find myself, and I have books obviously behind me. There's a ton of them, but I find myself.
Book?
It's
book?
over there. I'm looking at it right there. Creative visualization right over there.
Yeah, he's got it.
But you know, I find myself grabbing these books for different reasons. Like when I was on vacation, I tried taking the Kindle to hang out next to the pool, but it felt better having a physical book out there for some reason. But then when I'm home or I'm in Starbucks or whatever, I want my tablet and I want to go through it that way. Is that what you're seeing at DPS, or is your entire audience like it's all got to be digital or nothing? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'll speak for DPS and then for myself and my site because we're similar but different. You know, my own personal preference is I have a Kobo, which is the Canadian version of a Kindle, and we've traveled for extended period of times, like 10 weeks at a time, and you really don't want to haul books around, so that's kind of the only way to go if you're an extended traveler. You want to have it on a device. And most of the DPS products are digital. Like, we don't have any physical products. And in a way, it simplifies things because we don't have to deal with outside distributors or publishers or, you know, putting it on Amazon or having an ISBN or, you know, all of those things that I'm sure Rick's had to deal with. And delivery is simple. You know, you buy it, you click your PayPal, you pay, and you get your book. There it is, right? So I think there's pros and cons, like you said, to both. Personally, when I'm, you know, in bed reading, I like to have my Kobo because I can turn the lights out and I can still read, you know, if my husband's gone to sleep and I'm not disturbing him, you know. But you're right, sometimes you just want to have a physical book in your hand. And I think for me, I prefer fiction books on paper. But if I'm going to look at like a book like Rick's with the beautiful, big, you know, colorful pictures, I think there's definitely a pro to having something tactile that you can touch. You know, I've got a shelf full of the big coffee table books, and those are my prized possessions, right?
Yeah, yeah. I wonder where all this stuff is going, because, you know, you've probably seen the rumors from various typical news sources about what Apple's going to do next, and the big rumor, one of their future products might be a larger iPad, right? So, like a pro-level iPad, and I wonder what that's going to do to this industry again. I mean, is it going to shift, like Rick, from your perspective, is it going to shift how you look at books? Because now, instead of your book showing up, I'm looking for my iPad, instead of your book showing up on an iPad mini or a regular iPad, right, now it can be in its full glory on what presumably a giant retina display that you carry around with you.
Well, actually, I think some of the pictures look better on the iPad in the book because that's projected art, and this is reflected art. So if I'm looking at my book now, and, you know, I have these fluorescent lights over, which, as you know, kills the reds, the pictures, and there's like some reflections on it, looks different than on the, you know, the retina screen, like you say, like on my iPad, or you can look at it on a computer too. So I think one of the reasons why people buy books, and especially, this is like an impulse buy sometimes. We were talking about this last time we talked, you know, a couple of weeks ago, that if I do a book signing, tons of people buy books, and they could have bought the books before, but they buy them there because it's like it's an impulse buy. And I think people want a piece of the presenter. So if you get a book, you feel like you have a piece of the author, right? Yeah. And it also, I think, it makes it real. Like, I have GarageBand on my computer here, but I also have like a real guitar and a real piano.
Right? Yeah. It's different modes of learning. Yeah, it's interesting you say that because. Yeah, you're right. Because if you go to some seminar or some workshop or whatever, I could see the difference, right? And Darlene, I would love you to chime in on this because you could see the difference. So, presenter's on stage, he finishes and says, you know, hey, you
download my book
at the back of the room or in the front of the wherever. There's my book. You can buy it 50% off, whatever. People are gonna rush the stage. Versus if he puts up a slide that says, hey, you want an ebook? it's whatever, $24.95, $49.95. Here's a coupon code for 50% off. I wonder how many people would convert versus one or the other. What do you think?
It's interesting you say that because I actually have a survey that I did of my readers before we came out with our online courses, because people learn in different ways, right, and different modalities, right? And so especially if you're doing a how-to book, people get their information and prefer to learn in different ways. So I asked them what they preferred, a digital ebook, physical printed book, or an online course. So an online course was 54%. Digital book was 15.5%, and ebook was digital book, so 15.5, and a physical book, 5.5%. So in terms of learning, maybe that's a specific topic, like we did a portrait course, 5.5% physical book.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is really interesting.
It might depend on the topic, like Photoshop. You want to learn Photoshop or Lightroom, I think online is absolutely the way to go.
Right. Yeah, because it's show and tell, right? And Rick, both of you guys remember the era of publishing when everything was a Bible, right? The Illustrator Bible, the Photoshop Bible, and you get this big, thick book that you never read. It became a reference, and by the time you get around to reading it, it's like, oh, I'm 2 versions behind there, so I got to toss that. You don't even want to give it to a library, right? So, so now we're in a generation. I think I'm answering my own question, because I think for these technical books, like Darlene, like you said, for these technical books, digital makes a lot of sense when it's like step 1, step 2, all this stuff, because that information changes all the time. But when it moves into more fiction or artistic and inspirational, you want, like Rick said, you want the physical book. I don't know, like for me, when I look at this stuff, what I would like to have, Rick, I would love to have 3, like to use Darlene's word, modalities. I want an ebook, I want a physical book, and I want audio, and I want them all to sync up. This is in my world, right? I want to listen to the audio when I'm on a commute, and then pick up on the ebook in bed when I'm laying there and I'm going through it, and then somehow I want it to sync to my paper version. I don't know how that's going to work.
Well, I think that actually I'm writing a book that has a photography book that has no pictures in it.
Oh.
And it's a story of this. It starts out, these people are on safari and they're just talking about. It's kind of like, did you see The Bridges of Madison County with Clint Eastwood? He's a photographer.
I've seen that many decades ago.
Well, he's a National Geographic photographer. It's a romantic story, and you learn stuff in it. But you'd really learn a lot about. It would force you to really think. So I'm thinking of doing this next. So you may get your wish.
I think that's awesome. Like especially Darlene with ebooks. Do you guys get a demand for people that just want the audio version? Because with Audible.com, I find myself looking, when I'm on Amazon, I'm looking for the ebook version first for a lot of titles, especially if it's like a marketing title. I don't want to read through it and get tired. I want it to be like the Matrix dumped into my brain. I want to know it.
Not so much, because I mean, like Rick said, a lot of the how-to stuff you kind of need to see, diagrams and what the aperture is doing and what the picture looks like when so you need to see stuff, right? When you're in a visual medium. But there's also something else, like to use my word again, the modalities is people have a preference for how they take information in, right? Like, I don't know if you've done any research or learning. It's called neuro-linguistic programming, right? And you're either auditory, visual, or kinesthetic, right? And if you're auditory, you like to hear things. If you're visual, you need to see things. And if you're kinesthetic, you got to touch it, right? So your kinesthetic people are your paper book people. Your auditory people are your audibles, and then your visuals are your ebooks, right?
Yeah, I have multiple modality disorder then, because I want
there you go.
I want all those things at different times depending on my mood. So let's segue the conversation into money here, right? And again, both of you are the perfect people to be talking about this from different perspectives. Rick, you first. So when the photographer is listening to this and they're like, you know what? One day I feel like I'll feel like I've made it if I write a book and I have an ISBN number and I'm in Barnes & Nobles. That means I've made it, right? So I'm shooting for that. Is that still a viable goal to be shooting towards having a book on the shelf?
Well, above all, I think a book is a great calling card. You know, like if I do a lot of trade-offs. So if I want to like do a safari to Africa, if I send them, a code to download an ebook, you know, they may not say, come on over, we'll give you the free trip or whatever. But if I send them the book autographed, to them, and I show them, what I'm going to do for them and all this other stuff. I mean, having a book I think it's a fantastic calling card. And published by someone else, because you could publish it, on Blurb or whatever. But talking about making it, you got to. What I would encourage authors to do is to try to get their name. I don't know if you can see this. When you do a book, can you see? You get your name.
Sammon. Yeah.
You get the name above the title.
Oh, look at that!
You get your name above the title. So I have to negotiate with the publishers.
I think I may change the name of TWiP to Frederick Van Johnson's TWiP.
See, there you go. It took a while. This is my 36th book. I think it.
Oh, good grief!
At about 26, I started to realize that. But it is a good,
But what's the reason? What's is it an SEO thing, or is it just a perception thing?
It's a perception thing.
Okay.
It's definitely a perception thing. It's the same book. But I would encourage people, if you have an idea, I have this blog post. I think you're going to have a link for it, 12 tips for writing a how-to book.
Yeah.
And I corrected a typo in the tip number 12, so thank you very much, my friend. So I think it's just a great calling card, and never give up. Yeah. Because I have, out of the 36 books, I think I have about 7 different publishers, because not every publisher wants the book. It's about give us an indication of revenue. I mean, without going into specifics or disclosing anything personal. Like if someone's looking at writing a book and say that it's their first time out, they're a first time author. Most of us know the flow is if you sign a book deal with a publisher, there's generally, depending on who you are and your negotiation skills, maybe an advance, and then you get a percentage of future earnings. Right.
If someone signs a book deal these days, say they have a significant or a relatively decent following online, are they going to be buying their Tesla in a couple of months, or what do you think?
Coffee.
Or a cup of coffee to put in.
No, you could buy a Tesla, but just like you could buy a Volkswagen bus that it just will be the real one. Okay, so you could buy the mini Tesla, but I would say honestly the book advances today depending on who you are and your following. Your social media following means a lot, as you know. It could be between $2,500 to $20,000.
Wow.
So that's an advance, but that's against royalties. So then you have to say you got 20,000. Then you have to sell enough books to make that 20,000.
And what if you don't sell enough books to make that 20,000? Do they come after you?
No.
Okay.
No. So but if you do another book, and sometimes that's in the contract too, they could take away sales from the first book. Say the second book is doing well, but they're going to take some advance away from the first book. So you really have to be.
That's in the contract. You have to read that contract.
You have to be a really good business person to do this, and the rights, and the this, and the that, and I think with this book, you can't use this X amount of material like more than X amount of times or whatever. And I don't remember what that is, but you're motivated to promote the book.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? They want you to push it out there.
And then depending on how many copies you buy, you get a discount. If I buy like 10 copies, they may give it to me at 20% off. But if I buy 500 copies, they may give me 60% off. So if they give me 60% off and I go have a book signing, then I can make some decent money.
Yeah.
Backup money.
See, you need to write a book on this.
Well, I have a blog post on it. But I should write.
You cover all that in the 12 tips?
Well, I think I have. I don't have the stuff about the advance in there, but I have stuff like know your competition. Knowing your competition is really important. What are some of the other ones? Let your personality shine through. Everybody knows what I know, right? Yeah. About zoomorphic images, and isomorphic images, and all these things I talk about with the creative visualization. But you have to make it fun. For someone like me, I like to make it fun. So you have to let your personality shine through. That's why a lot of people say, "Hey, it sounds like you're talking."
Yeah, and that's the key, right? Yeah. I love it.
I think for some people.
Like when I read your books, Rick, I hear your accent, your New York kind of accent in the background.
Yeah.
It's awesome. The Godfather accent is reading to me as I read the book. So,
but see, if I have the audio version, you and I, we really can't divulge this on TWiP, but you and I know the guy who could do a great job reading this book.
Oh, yeah.
He'd love it.
All right, we'll talk about that later. Darlene, let's talk money on the ebook side of things, versus the like we discussed with Rick on the physical book publishing side of things. Traditional book publishing, there's that advance, and then it's against royalties, and like Rick said, it could be anywhere from $2,500 to 20 grand. What do the mechanics look like on the ebook publishing side of things?
Now, I will give you a caveat that I am not the right person to ask because I'm not in charge of that with DPS. That would be Jasmine. But I am in the know of some information. Generally, how we work with our writers is it's a mutual agreement and it's a revenue split. Yeah, it's either a revenue split or it's the author is paid, X number amount of an advance, like Rick said, up front. And then they get a smaller revenue split later on. So it really depends on the contract. Yeah, but I can tell you that the ebooks is the largest source of income that DPS has of all the things that we do, right? Wow. So on DPS there's Amazon links, so we get affiliate money from that. There's ads and things. We do AdSense and other ads, and by far away the ebooks are the biggest sellers.
So why wouldn't one of these contributing ebook people that are putting ebooks on DPS, why wouldn't they just say, you know what, revenue split, I don't want any of that, I'm going to write it myself and put it on whatever, and put a little PayPal link on it.
We got 7 million eyeballs a month. They don't.
The audience, right? Yeah, so it's all about the audience in the end, and then for both sides, right, Rick? So 7 million eyeballs on an ebook versus 7 million eyeballs on a physical book, still 7 million eyeballs, and a percentage of those people.
Actually, it'd be 14 million eyeballs because everybody has 2 eyeballs. So.
Oh. But only one brain, Darlene Hildebrandt.
No, but that's true. That's why you want a real book publisher, because they have distribution around the world, and then you make a few extra bucks when it's translated into other languages.
Yeah. So with the publishers that you've dealt with, Rick, over time, how have they been? Notwithstanding your current publishers, but in the past, have the publishers come through on that promotion side for you?
Not on the promotion side. I mean, it's been up to me.
Yeah.
Especially in the last, I'd say in the last 10 years, because they have a million things to do. They're in business. You would think that they would want to promote it more, right? Because the more they promote it, but as Darlene said, I have greater visibility than like any of my publishers.
Yeah.
So it's up to me. But they do work out deals like with the international, with the reprints in foreign languages.
Yeah. Interesting. This whole thing is interesting. And I'm happy to hear that print publishing is not dead, at least on the book side. We've been for the last 5 years or so, we've been talking about newspaper publishing going down the tubes, and it's still hanging on, right? It's still around. So
I'm just going to get a book and show you, so just keep there. I'll be right back.
Yeah, go for it. All right, while he's getting that, Darlene, I'm going to transition us into education, like modern photography and photography education. You see this note that we put in the notes here. So in terms of overall education, when I talk to people, and I'll have Rick talk about this too, when I talk to people and they're like, okay, how do you get better as a photographer? My knee-jerk response is always know the basics of light, exposure, shutter speed, what f-stops do and how they affect your overall exposure, understand composition and all that stuff, or not composition, but composition, and just the basics of photography. In modern photography, this article that we're going to point to in the show notes, this person's talking about how it's failing people in terms of the basics somewhat, but on the long term, it's the business side of things. Do you see that too from your perspective, Darlene?
Yeah, absolutely, and I actually have a unique perspective because I went to a college, probably not unlike what he went to, and mine was not recent, so I don't know if I want to date myself or not, but I'm going back 27 years. And it was exactly like what the author described in the article, which is we were taught we could light the crap out of anything, right? We could light a ball bearing or a bottle of wine or a person and pose a person and compose the heck out of it. But we knew nothing about business. We had a business class that was literally a joke, and we had an accounting class that was kind of a joke, and nobody really wanted to go to them. And I think just to put part of the onus back on the student is, again, I can only speak for myself, but we were young and arrogant, and we thought we knew everything, and we were going to get out of school and own the world and all these things. And lo and behold, life happens, and you get a kick in the head, and you realize, okay, I don't know everything. And I think in hindsight, even if they offered those kinds of classes, it's possible that the students really wouldn't pick up on it, because they want to learn the fun stuff. They want to learn how to do photography and Photoshop and make pretty art pictures, right? And they don't want to sit in the classroom and learn business because they're not in business school. However, I teach adult classes and on some weekends and things, and through my website, I get a lot of questions. And in fact, I just did an article on whether going pro is right for you or not. Maybe I'll give it to you in the show notes.
Yes, please.
Because I actually chatted with one of my DPS writers who is an amateur, and he writes for us even though he's not a pro, and he shot a wedding, and we just chatted about his decision not to go professional as a photographer and keep his day job, because sometimes that can actually be beneficial and you keep your passion alive versus I tell people that the business of photography is 90% business and 10% photography. So if you want to do business, go into business as a photographer. If you want to do photography, stay an amateur.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of truth to what the author said about needing to learn business to be successful, because that's what's going to make or break you in this industry for sure.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Rick, you went and grabbed something. What did you go get?
Yeah. Well, I have something to say about that too. But just talking about different publishing, getting foreign language editions. I don't know whether this is Korean, Japanese, or Chinese, but here's one of my books called Face to Face.
Oh yeah, look at that. That looks kind of Chinese. That looks Japanese to me, actually.
That was Japanese. That was Exploring the Light, actually. Here's Face to Face.
That looks
great. Any listeners out there who can get. I have actually 3 copies of these books, but it's kind of fun to look through this, and see the type there. So anyway, that's one thing you have to think about when you think about your audience, and it's for ebooks too, because I have a lot of ebooks. You don't want to think, who in the United States is going to buy it only. You want to think about who around the world is going to buy this.
Right.
China is just an amazing, amazing market.
So Rick, to continue on this, what we were talking about, the idea of modern photography education failing its students, and what Darlene was saying specifically from the standpoint of business. Like she went through school 3 or 4 years ago, and and she found that the business side of things was severely lacking. You're an educator. Do you see that as well?
It depends on the school. I won't name the school. I gave a presentation at a very, very well-known photography school. Very well-known. So I asked the director, what percentage of your students go off to be professional photographers? And he said, without blinking an eye, 10%. That's terrible. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I'm down at Daytona State Community College, speaking there. The kids are so enthusiastic. The other one was a private school. I'm down there. The kids are so enthusiastic at Daytona. They have such a high success rate. And I was actually down there, teaching business, and they put a focus on that. So, Darlene, what she said is exactly right about the 90%. I was at a party the other day, and my son was there, and someone says, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a photographer." And he says, "Dad, you're not a photographer. You're an entrepreneur who happens to be a photographer."
There you go.
So you look at Joe McNally, you look at Jay Maisel, you look at all these people who are successful. They're all very good business people.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, so is the solution for these schools, like the unmentionable school that you're referring to, should they front load business courses and eat your vegetables before you get to the state kind of thing?
Well, this school is a private school. It costs a lot of money, and I think a lot of people, the parents send the kids there, or people go there. I think what Darlene said, they're more interested in saving the world with their art, which is an admirable goal, and a lot of people can do that. But for the if you want to survive, you have to focus every day on the business. I know so many great photographers who are not good business people.
Right.
They have to close their studio. They have to do something else.
Right. I mean, it's business. It's not only just business. That's kind of the overall umbrella, but it's underneath that business umbrella. There's the marketing. There's the accounting. All the business structure. Understanding that piece of it. Outbound communication. All that stuff you have to understand. And like Darlene was saying, then you can get to the little bit that's the creative piece of it. But
you mentioned.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Darlene.
And I was going to say that don't forget about the dirty S word, Frederick, which is sales, right?
Oh.
How many photographers do you know? And if you ask them in a room full of them, they'll say they hate doing sales, and that's typical of somebody who's creative. They feel like because they're selling themselves and it's very personal, and they're not good at that, and they don't feel good at that. And what Rick said is the ones that excel are good at business, good at marketing, and good at sales. And I actually really enjoy sales, and so I was good at that. I was as a rep for an album company for 9 years, so I did sales, right? So I have a lot of experience in that. And when my students ask me, what is the one thing I need to learn to go into business, or where should I go to better my photography before I open my own business, and I'll tell them, it's not another photography class. You don't need a new lens. You need to learn how to do sales, and you need to learn how to do business, and if you're not good at those things, you better find a partner real fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like they say, I mean, what do you guys, do you agree with the idea that if you are a mediocre photographer but an excellent marketer and salesperson, you're going to do well, but if
Absolutely.
you are an excellent photographer and you suck at marketing and sales, you're going to starve?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
It's sad, but
perception is everything.
Yeah.
Someone did a poll like years ago. They were trying to find out who the average American thought was the most famous photographer. Right? And you never guess, so I want to ask you even. Ashton Kutcher.
What?
Really?
Because he had the beard, he's in the camera ad, right? They thought he was the most famous photographer.
Oh man, yeah. I was thinking of another photographer whose name starts with A and ends in Adams, but
right. That's where I was going.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's so
guys
weird.
like Kenny Rogers, right? He's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
He's got some good. Brian Adams, so these
Brian
guys.
Adams, very good.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, crazy world we live in. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss some learning resources for photographers and where they can go online to get their fill of pixels and learning. All right, we're back. We're going to dive right into this next segment, and that's photography learning resources. In the notes here, I put things to talk about. First of all, there's podcasts, obviously, that you can learn from, and YouTube, which I'm on YouTube all the time learning different techniques. So it's like a never-ending trough of learning resources up there. But then there's like more polished learning resources available, like Creative Live and Kelby and Linda. You've got the Arcanum, with the Trey Radcliffe has out there, Photoshop Cafe, Engage Live. It goes on and on and on. All these different things that we have out there. Darlene, what's a photographer to do when we see all this stuff out there? We're like, and plus there's books, there's so many ways or modalities to learn this stuff. How do you pick a horse to ride?
Well, I'm going to take a different approach to this question because I'm fairly new, and I'm going to say in the last 3 years to the blog world, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I was learning about blogging and WordPress and all this kind of stuff, I was reading like 20 blogs, right? And I tried to keep up to all this stuff, and I was following this guy and that guy. And what ended up happening is that they all say different things, and they have different advice, and often it conflicted, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was just getting confused. So what I ended up doing was I found a guy that I really liked what he's had to say. He wasn't fake. He was just a real dude. He wasn't blowing, sunshine up your, telling you that it's going to be all great and sunshine and roses and you'll make $1 billion. He says, no, it's going to be hard work, and this is what you got to do, and I'll outline it step by step for you. So I followed him, and it's taken me to have some success with my website and my blog. And I would say that I would advise people to do the same thing. find somebody whose teachings you enjoy, whether it's me or Rick or the resources on DPS. You know, we have fairly consistent writers there as well. Find somebody that you enjoy, their style of writing, like Rick said, their personality, and just follow and absorb everything that they put out and start there.
So start with the personality and then look at and find out where they're teaching and go there instead of starting with the learning resource and finding a person there.
Totally.
Rick, do you agree with that? I mean, is that the right way to go?
Yeah, I think you just search around, like YouTube, like you said. YouTube's amazing, and I think people search YouTube maybe first for stuff. Like I play piano, and I just put a little thing together. Took about a day to do it, and it's like how to make a boring chord sound beautiful. I won't go into how to do it, but it's my most popular out of all the videos, my photography videos from the Masai Mara and Myanmar. It's my most popular video because people searched on it. I never promoted it, but they found it. Thousands of people want to learn how to turn boring chords into beautiful chords.
Yeah.
So you give, I think, for content, you know, people who produce content, putting free stuff on YouTube is really important. Like I do have a lot of free YouTubes from Myanmar, 24 Hours on the Mara, and you know I did some stuff for Trey, as you mentioned before. My father says, he says, how can you give away so much stuff for free? I said, the more you give away for free, you know, the more followers you get, the more you make, and someone may buy a book or an app or come on a workshop or come to a seminar or buy a plugin where you get the affiliate program or whatever. It's all tied together.
Yeah, we're in the attention economy still, right? And the more eyeballs you have, the more influence you have over those eyeballs. So yeah. I don't know, Darlene. What about YouTube? I mean, for me, YouTube is like Rick was saying. It's like okay, at the top of when I'm looking for something to do, the first place I go to learn how to do it is YouTube, and then I kind of my learning kind of hierarchy is I go to YouTube. If I can't find there, I'll go someplace else. But if I'm trying to learn something deep, like Premiere Pro CC 2015, I'm going to Lynda. You know, I'm going to go dive into lynda.com and like take a course, you know, and get up to speed on it. If I want to learn something specific, like how this crazy title tool works in Premiere, I'm going to go to YouTube to learn that. Is that fair? Is that a fair way to be looking at this stuff?
Yeah, I would say I follow a similar path. I don't use Lynda as much. I've bought a few Creative Live courses, and I find them really helpful because, especially for somebody, if you're on a budget, right, they can go watch it live for free. That's why it's live, Creative Live. And then if you find the information is valuable or you missed a part of it, you know, they give you a discount to buy it within the first, 72 hours or whatever. It's interesting because the conference that I mentioned I was at in Portland a couple weeks ago, Chase Jarvis was there, and he gave everybody in the audience a $150 gift certificate to Creative Live. And I'm going to use mine on a non-photography course, believe it or not. It's actually the psychology of people, and it's really interesting, but guess what? It's related to business again, right? So it's the psychology of business and how people relate to you and how they trust you. And I'll ask both of you this question because you're both, teachers and speakers. What part of the body do you think people look at to determine your first impression? Their first
It's body language, I know.
But which part of the body?
To determine the first impression?
Yeah. Probably your hands.
I'm going to go with eyes.
Rick nailed it.
It's
hands?
hands?
That's because I'm Italian.
Oh. It's hands.
Really, when I give a talk, that's the first thing I do. I say, thank you guys so much for being here.
Really?
Yeah.
What does it mean? So, like, if you don't speak with your hands and you're kind of like crossed...
If your hands are down like this under a desk, like if you're meeting with somebody, I can give you this lady's website. It's actually really interesting. Like I said, it's all psychological stuff, and she's done studies on this where if they're a inmate is up for parole and they sit with their hands, or a defense, a person's in the courtroom as a defender and their hands are under the table, they're far more likely to be committed and found guilty than if their hands are above the table. And they did a comparison of TED Talks on the same topic of people that had more hand gestures in their videos than less hand gestures, and they got watched like 2 times more. The one that she used as an example was Simon Sinek's, and there was another guy that did the exact same topic. He's got like 20,000 views, and Simon Sinek got like 25 million. And they were almost exactly the same content.
That's amazing. Well, I know if I ever get in trouble with the law and I'm in court, I'm doing jazz hands the entire time.
Yeah, there you go.
It's bad the other way.
But you
Well,
know,
don't do jazz hands or do jazz hands.
No, don't do jazz hands.
but this is really important. Actually, you know, we're laughing about this, but this is really important. Like when I give a talk, the first thing I wrote a list of requirements, and one is a wireless mic, right? And I need a table where I could see my computer, because I'm always walking around. Mm-hmm. I give presentations from 9 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And you're always teasing me about my age, but I could still do this. And I'm always walking. I walk through the whole thing.
Yeah.
But something related to the hands and everything, and about books. One of the best books I ever read is Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. And people who succeed in life definitely have. There's a higher percentage of people who succeed who have emotional intelligence than intellectual intelligence.
What does that mean? What is emotional intelligence?
Like what Jan was saying, you have to perceive what people like. You have to know if you might hurt someone's feelings. You have to be aware of everyone in the room. Like I'm not going to make a political joke if I'm someplace, or I'm not going to talk about guns or whatever. You have to be so aware of your body language, what you say, your inflection, your enthusiasm. And another thing that's really important when you're talking, actually, one of the things that's really effective when I'm giving a speech is this. Being quiet for a couple of seconds like that. I see you smile. So all these things, but Emotional Intelligence might be one of the best books I've ever. He came up with a follow-up one. But
that's great. I mean, that's a really great point. I've read that too, and that's hard to do. Like the silence piece of it, because for me, when I'm public speaking, there's that inherent nervousness, and my brain wants to fill in every blank. That's why you say and and like and all these.
And so.
Yeah, exactly. All these crutches that you use, because your brain says if there's dead air, that's wrong. You got to fill up every spot out there, and you're saying insert some dead air from time to time.
Well, I give this talk on creative visualization, and in this book I mentioned this book by it's called Color and Vision. It's by the guy who wrote Dinotopia. I forget his name right now, but anyway, he says that, and I say this in this big room. I say, and Monet the painter. Mm-hmm. I say, and you know what? When Monet the painter made it big when he learned how to paint air. So I leave that little silence in there, and the people are amazed that Monet could paint air. So as opposed to, Monet was amazing. He learned how to paint air. It's not the same.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Can I take this back to education for a second?
Yeah, please. Yes.
So it was interesting, though, that the pause thing, because the pause that Rick just did in the public speaking thing, isn't that kind of like negative space in our photographs?
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yep.
And the education thing, I was going to say, kind of to summarize, okay, where do we go to learn? Ultimately, I don't think there is a single source, and there's so many places, like I said, but don't limit yourself to just photography resources either. I've just mentioned, a resource, and Rick's just mentioned a resource. So expand your knowledge, because I think to be a better photographer, you have to be a more well-rounded person. That's a strong belief that I have as well. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. Good stuff. We could do a whole show on just that topic, because Darlene, I'm going to pick your brain later about the whole NLP thing, because I'm into that too. That's some crazy stuff. All right, guys, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to answer a question from one of our listeners. All right, it is time for some Q&A. This week's question is from Richard. Richard says, I want to try photographing silhouettes. Can you provide me with any tips on how to make great silhouette photos? Darlene, do you have some tips on that? I have a feeling you might have one or two.
I do. I actually, you mentioned Erica Thornes earlier, or we talked about her off the air, and I actually did an interview with her on my website. I'd be happy to share the link with it, and she gave 3 fabulous tips for making silhouette photography. Here, I don't know if I can do a screen share, but she said her 3 keys, because she does amazing silhouettes, is to have a low camera angle. You want to get down low, right, so that the body is separated from the horizon, right, so that the sky dominates and the light source is behind them. You need separation of body parts, right? So if they're got their arms and legs together, they look like a blob, but your elbows out, you need to have that separation, right?
Negative space in there.
Yeah, some space, legs apart and so on. And if you're a couple, you want to make sure that they're not all sort of mushed together, right? Like the typical movie pose with the foot up or something that's, nice, a lady in a skirt so you can see which is a lady, which is the man, that type of thing. And then lastly, expose for the sky so that the sky is rich and dark and it's not overexposed. So you got no blinkies in your histogram. But I'm happy to put a link to that, and you can see Erica's fabulous images on that as well.
Yeah, definitely give us a link to that. And also I want to mention Jan Kabili interviewed Erica for her show on the This Week in Photo Network a couple of weeks ago, and the topic was silhouettes, obviously, because Erica's clearly the expert in that. But she also gave Jan a pack of presets to give away for free. I think there's like 3 or 4 presets in there that folks can download for free. And I know you, Darlene, have some presets out there too, right?
Well, they are coming soon. I believe this is, as the time this goes out, they'll be out in about a week and a half or so. They're going to be released August 10th. Okay. However, I'll put a link in the show notes. If people want to sign up now, they can get on an early bird list, because there's going to be 2 sets. I haven't finished the second one yet. But if they buy them on as the early bird list, they'll actually get both sets for the price of one, and then they'll be notified when they're available as well.
Very cool. I have a feeling Rick has probably written about silhouettes from time to time in 37 books he's got out there.
Those are all really good tips that Darlene gave. Basically having the clear background. But I just give one. If you want to recognize the person, and I think this is maybe the most important thing in a silhouette. If you want to recognize the person in the silhouette, you have to have the person looking, at the same angle as the sensor. Because if you're looking, if you're photographing me like this, I'm a silhouette. You're not going to know who I could be. Frederick Van Johnson with a shorter haircut, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm like this, you'll be able to recognize it. And if you're in a studio, or if you're just in your house, you have a white wall, just shine the flash on the white wall, right? And that should silhouette the subject. If you're underexposed, you could also gel the flash, put a little gel over it, like in the early iPod commercials. Remember, they had the person. Those are nice silhouettes.
Yeah.
But yeah, have the person looking off makes a big difference.
Fun stuff. So many cool things to do. I mean, isn't it weird? It's so cool that just the one little topic of silhouettes is so deep. As a photographer, people get that whole analysis paralysis disease where they get this new gear and they go out and they're like, okay, I don't know what to shoot, but I have $3,000 worth of gear. I don't know what to shoot. If you give yourself one topic like silhouettes and just drill into it and have fun with it and beat it to death, you'd be surprised at what you come up with, right?
Well, I've been around a while, and in 1978, I was the editor of Studio Photography magazine. Oh. And at that point, I learned where the word silhouette came from.
Do tell, sir.
There was a count. No, we got to save it for the next show. In France, there was in France, this is before they had photographs and papers. There was the Count de Silhouette. He was a treasurer, and he was caught stealing money. So they depicted this Count de Silhouette as a very shady character. So that became known as a silhouette.
Oh, wow. See that? Look at that. See? A wealth of information. I love it. Cool. All right. Well, listeners, if you'd like a question for us to tackle in the show, just visit us at thisweekinphoto.com and click on that Submit a Question link to send us your question, or you can even leave us a voice message. Coming up after the break, we're going to share our picks of the week. All right, guys, let's jump into the Picks of the Week segment. Remember, your pick can be anything to recommend to the TWiP Army as long as it is somehow related to photography. Darlene Hildebrandt, what is your pick of the week?
All right. Well, I already mentioned my own Lightroom presets that are coming out. So my pick of the week is actually going to be something that's free, which I know people love, right? That's a good price.
Yes.
And I've recommended this program before. It's called Star Stacks. It's StarStax. And I taught a night photography class out in the middle of the Oregon forest, like literally. We're talking dark sky. They turned all the lights out for us. We had optimal conditions for stars and star trails. We got the Milky Way, and myself and 2 of my diehard students, we spent an hour doing bracketed shot, shooting the time-lapse thing and interval shots, and we did some star trails. And it's just a really fun program to just throw your star trail shots in. It processes them for you like that. And I've done light trails, like car trails with it as well, and it's super easy. You don't even need Photoshop. Make star trails. Boom.
Love it. I want to read that because that's one thing I've never done. Star trails, or I've never done the two things on my list that relate to the sky: is star trails and getting some amazing shots of the Milky Way. I haven't done that yet, or the aurora. I haven't even shot the aurora borealis. You know?
I have an article that's coming out as we're recording this in 2 days. So when this show is out, it'll be live, and I'll put a link in the show for you, so you can. I'll even give you my images, Frederick, because that's just how I roll. I'm giving everybody my images so that they can download them and plug them in the program and try it themselves.
Oh, sweet, cool. See, it's all about giving. See, Rick, see what you started.
It is.
I love it. All right, thanks, Darlene. That's a perfect.
Very good.
And Rick, Sammon, what's your pick?
Well, my pick is my new toy that I got just last week. It's the Canon 5DS.
Oh no! Look at that. Okay.
So it is an amazing camera, but the files are so big. So it takes I'm used to like reviewing my pictures because, as you know, I'm a little hyper. So I can't review my pictures, and when I shoot the HDR sequence, I'm waiting. But everything in photography, everything in life is a trade-off, right? Mm-hmm. So the image quality is just amazing. But I
have to recommend that you, Rick, go check out the latest episode of All About the Gear.
I saw that someone did it.
It just went live. It just went live today. So it was Doug Kay and Gordon Lang reviewed the Canon 5DS. So you have to check it out.
And do you have chips that have the 2 rows of contacts?
What is that? I don't even know what that is.
It's what the heck do they call it? I don't even know what you call it. All I know is that I went to WPVI and I went to the SanDisk booth and I was showing the guy. I had my Fuji X-T1 and the guy goes, does it take forever for images to preview? I go, yeah. He goes, try this. He put this in my camera and the previews came up immediately and I marched over to B&H and I bought 3 of them. So that's all I know.
Really? And is it like, okay, you gotta look into that.
It's a new technology, and the cameras have to be compatible with it, which the Fuji is, and I would guess that if that camera takes SD cards as well as CF cards, you can get it. It says on here, HC2, I don't even know.
You gotta Google that and give us a link. We gotta put that in the show notes.
All right, I'll find it on B&H. I can see what I ordered. There you go.
There you go. Perfect. Look at this. All right. Perfect pick of the week. All right, and I think that's it. So we're gonna close off the show now.
What's your pick of the week, Frederick?
I don't have I was trying to sneak by without giving a pick of the week. Thanks for outing me, Darlene. I don't have a pick of the week this week. I have nothing to recommend this week. All right, I'll recommend one thing. This is something I've been experimenting with. Something I was gonna hold off, but since you put me, in front of the spotlight, I did an interview with the guys from a company called Live Portrait last week, I think it was, and it went live today on This Week in Photo. But they do this free app. It's the coolest thing in the world. They do this free app that you put on your iPhone, and with their service, you marry an image up with a video. And then when you aim your camera at the print or on screen or whatever, it overlays whatever the camera sees with the video. So it makes the video come alive, and it shows it in perspective, like augmented reality. So as you move the camera around, the video stays mapped to that surface. It's ridiculously cool.
I want to see that.
Yeah, go to thisweekinphoto.com. I think it's TWiP Talks episode 15. It's on the front page as this is recorded, but it'll probably way down in the flow by the time you guys hear this. But yeah, definitely check it out. It's 2 guys that are, they're young, they're hungry, they're experimenting with augmented reality as it applies to photography. One of their first commercial uses of the technology has been yearbooks. So imagine a yearbook where you open it up and the kids aim their smartphone at a print or one of the photos, and the photo just starts talking on the page. It's the coolest thing in the world. So
that's cool.
Yeah, right? So that's my pick of the week, Darlene, putting me under the gun. Live Portrait, put it in the show notes. All All right, guys. Before we sign off, what's coming up? What's coming up in the coming months for you, Darlene?
Oh, what isn't? Well, okay, so launching my Lightroom presets in the next couple weeks, and I'm going to be having a summer sale on my 2 existing courses, so my portrait lighting course, and it's more of a beginner course, 4 weeks to better photography.
Yep.
And then at the end of August, my husband and I are off to Peru for 2.5 weeks to scout, because we're going to be planning a new tour there for 2016. So we're going to be meeting with some guides and some charities and stuff, because we like to incorporate an element of giving. We talked about giving back, right? Mm-hmm. So we build that into our tours when we can. So that's what we're doing in the next month.
What happened to Cuba? No Cuba trip this year?
Still doing that. Yeah, still doing that, but we're adding all the time. So we have Nicaragua in November, we have Cuba in January, and we're going to be adding either Southeast Asia, like Cambodia, Vietnam, or still toying with destinations, but I have a connection for New Zealand as well, and Peru in the fall of 2016.
Wow, very cool. You're just cranking. Love it.
So I'm never home. Never home.
Never home. That's good. That's good. All right, well, thanks for coming on, Darlene. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure having you on the show.
Always fun.
Yeah, nice to meet you there.
You too.
All right. Rick Sammon, what about you, man? What do you have coming up?
Well, coming up, going to Photoshop World. Right? Are you going to come?
That's in a week or so, right?
It's in August. It starts August something or other. I think August 10th we're going there.
I'm going to try to swing back through there because I'm going to be in Chicago until the 10th or the 11th. And Trey Radcliffe's doing a photo walk in Chicago on the 10th. So I'm going to try to do that and then come back through there, because I know Richard Harrington's having some sort of party for Photo Focus there I want to go to.
Well, you should come. I mean, Photoshop World, talk about learning. I just did 2 more classes for Kelby 1 on getting motivated, staying inspired, and 1 on how to turn your house into a studio, your home into a studio.
Oh, cool.
So I have 13 classes there, and they're all doing very well. But after that, we're going to Iceland. Have you been to Telluride, Colorado?
No, I haven't, no.
You should get invited as a speaker to both you guys, Telluride Photo Fest. So I have a workshop, Telluride Photo Fest. We got Cape Cod, got a bunch of workshops, and but the most important thing, my son is home for 2 weeks.
Oh, that is cool.
So we were we're doing a lot of fun. We went in our little canoe the other day. We're having a ton of fun.
That's really cool. Well,
and then I'm driving him right after Photoshop World to Chicago, actually, where you'll be. He's going for his PhD in finance at Northwestern Kellogg. So.
Wow.
So we're doing a road trip.
Look at that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, like I said with Darlene, it's always a pleasure having you on, Rick.
Man, you're the best.
We're going to be working together much more because you're doing a show on the TWiP network, Digital Photo Experience coming on. Yep.
Yes, Juan Pons and I are so happy to be moving over there with you. You got you're attracting. You're like a magnet, right? You're like a magnet attracting the best.
I'm trying to be like Jupiter, man. I'm just increasing my gravity,
Good for you. Good for you. You're a new planet.
Yeah, but Jupiter's a gas giant, so I don't know if... All right, so coming up for me, there's a lot of stuff coming up. So I'm going to Chicago, and then that's a family trip. Then I'm heading to Vietnam with Ralph Velasco on a tour there. It'll be my first time in Vietnam. And then I'm also going to Fiji on that Fiji tour. We mentioned that Fiji adventure. I'm going to do a blog post about it and a video. But we mentioned it on our last episode of TWiP, this whole Fijian adventure that's going on. And lo and behold, they contacted me and asked me if I'd be interested in coming along. Boom, I'm going to Fiji. So,
do you know what kava is? K-A-V-A?
No.
They make it from a root, and they put it in like a sock, and they dip it in water, and they pass it around in a bowl, and you drink it, and it feels like Novocaine in your mouth.
Oh,
and it
wow.
gets you a little high, and so they're playing their guitars under the palm trees and dancing. So you're gonna have kava. When next time I'm on the show with you after you come back, we're gonna talk about your kava experiences.
I'm gonna be like, yeah, man, it was awesome, Rick.
You'll drink. It doesn't really get you that high. It just feels good in your mouth. It's fun.
Cool. All right. I'm all in.
Well,
all
I'll be going to Peru, and I'll be chewing on coca leaves.
Oh, you need those, otherwise you get the altitude headache. Yeah.
Coca leaves. Wait. Before we go, explain that. So coca leaves,
so it's
altitude,
like
what?
the raw material of cocaine.
Yeah.
And in the Andes, like I've been to Peru before, so they make tea out of it. So it's a plant. Coca leaves are leaves of a plant,
Yeah.
and they soak them and they make tea, just like he said with the kava and stuff. And they'll give you some to just chew in your mouth because it helps you with altitude sickness. So when you go up into Cusco and Machu Picchu, you aren't puking your guts out.
Wow.
And have a terrible headache.
That too.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of headaches. Cool. See, all over the world.
Yeah.
And let this be a lesson to the listeners. Go out and do stuff. Because you know what I found in the years that I've been involved in doing this photography thing and the show and all that. It's not it's easy to get like stuck at home and not shoot stuff and look at other folks' work online and on 500 pics and all that and be like, wow, I could never shoot like that. One of the main differences between their work and your work is they went there.
Being is important.
Yeah, you gotta go there. Don't be like, okay, I never get anything good. Go to these different places. It's easier said than done for a lot of people, obviously, but when you can do it, go to some place different, even if it's just another town over from you.
Yeah.
Put yourself in a different location, and you'd be surprised at how it impacts your photography.
I actually just edited an article for DPS yesterday from one of our regular writers, and it was go on a cow safari. So if you can't afford the African safari, most places, there's probably some cows nearby, and they have nice scenery usually around them, and make a little picnic and just go for a drive and photograph some cows.
Totally. Yeah, there's cows in my area and sheep, and there's all kinds of stuff out here.
It was just about getting out, like you said, getting off the sofa, getting out of your rut, and just get out of the house.
Yep, go get some shots.
Yeah.
All right, that's a good way to end this show. Thank you both for coming on. This has been an inspirational education show. And a huge thanks to our sponsors, Panasonic Lumix Cameras, Lynda.com, and FreshBooks for their support of the show. And with that, I think it's time to take that lens cap off.